Hi, I'm Renée Walker, a mindset mentor, speaker, and lover of all things spiritual. I believe that at our core, we are all spiritually wired for love, peace, success, and abundance. Here on the podcast, we're diving into mindset, wellness, and business, but always through a spiritual lens. Let's just say we're going deep, but we're keeping it light. So let's elevate your life from the inside out, one conversation at a time. Welcome to Spiritually Wired. Hello and welcome to Spiritually Wired. So if you've been listening to this podcast, you know by now that I love my rituals. For me personally, find that they are a great way to create consistency and to really keep you connected to what matters to you and to keep you connected with I like to use the word, your higher self. One of the rituals that I actually do it weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly. But yearly is when I really sort of take more time and I go deeper. And again, when you're doing a yearly ritual, there's a different purpose behind it. There's a different energy behind it because you really are coming at it from you're just taking that bigger approach and looking for some clarity, some guidance as you move forward. Whenever we do reflections, it is important to be in a place of love. So the purpose of taking some time to reflect back on your year is not about judging yourself. It's not about being like, oh my goodness, here I am. I'm still here in the same place that I was at the beginning of the year. Here I am. Maybe you didn't work on certain areas of your life. Maybe life threw you a big curveball this year and everything changed. So it's not about judging yourself. It really truly is about coming from a place of self-love, checking in, seeing what's working, what's not working, what area am I maybe feeling stuck in? What area is really calling me? And where do I want to bring my energy as I move forward? Of course, this is something that we can do at any time of the year, but there is a certain energy in January, and I find in September too, those are the two times of year where there's just something in the air, right? Where we feel more inspired maybe to begin fresh. So there is something to be said for that. So this is one of the ways in which I do my year-end reflection. I call it my year-end process. I'm going to link in the show notes a PDF that you can download, and it's going to give you all of the steps. So we're going to go through them. I'm going to share a little bit more, go a little bit more in depth here in this episode. However, know that I've given you the resource so that you can make your favorite cup of tea. You can sit down, get cozy, light a candle, play some of your favorite music, and take some time for yourself to really check in and to see, okay, where am I? It's sort of like having a cup of tea with one of your friends. You're doing that with yourself and you're checking in. But again, always remembering to come from a place of love. Now, I am a big fan of setting goals. For me, I'm a goal setter. I love it. It makes me very excited. It's one of my favorite things to do is to sit down with a fresh new planner and to really sort of map out my year and to see, okay, what do I want to focus on? Where do I want to bring my energy to? So this is something that I personally love to do. However, I am not good with my reflection piece. So I'm sharing with you a process that I've been doing but I actually have to force myself a little bit to do this because it's more in my nature to be like, all right, this year is done. Check. Now let's move on to what else are we going to do this year? So it really, for me personally, requires a little bit of like, I need to push myself a little bit to do this work because I'm more excited about creating new things. But I know the power of taking the time to really sit down and to take a look at where I'm at. You know, I reference the book, The Gap and the Gain, quite often. It's a book by Dan Sullivan and Benjamin Hardy. And what that book did is it really sort of emphasized why it's important to do this work. And it's important because for many of us, we tend to move to the next thing. And that's a good quality to have because it means that you're, achieving things. And at the same time, it also is easy to slip into this space of never being enough, right? There's always more to do. You can easily get stuck in like that hamster wheel of like, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? As opposed to really taking the time to look back and to reflect and to say, wow, like I have come a long way. And maybe this particular area of my life is not what I hoped that it would look like, yet there are lessons that I can learn from it so that I can now choose, right? Make choices that will support my continued growth. So the reflection piece is really helpful when it comes to that, to cultivating some gratitude, to really being in a place of celebrating and gaining clarity by just looking at like what are the lessons that you can learn both from your successes and from the challenges. Okay, let's get right into it. I'm going to share with you this process. The first step is to really just take a moment to reflect back on your year. And the best way to do that is I have a paper planner that I use. So I go through my paper planner, I go through my phone because that's where I have all of like my calendar appointments. And I really go back to like, January and February, and I notice like where was I spending a lot of my energy? What were the things that I did? Because it's amazing how we forget. And sometimes there's even like trips that you forgot about or celebrations that you had that you forgot about. So it's good to take a look back and really sort of like go through it, less about, there's not necessarily feelings involved in this one. It's more just assessing where it is that you spent your time and energy in the past year and what were the things that showed up or what were the highlights maybe. So the first step is to kind of just get a more general overview of your year, your highlights, taking stock, if you will. And then you want to add sort of the feeling piece, right? Of like going into, okay, how was I feeling? Like, how was my mind, my body, my heart? Like, how were things going as I was moving through the year? So maybe adding now the feeling piece, the reflective piece of like, yeah, like this month or these few months where we moved, I can see that I had way too much stuff on my plate. So you're sort of like starting to get to more the meat of your reflection piece. So it's always in looking back that you can see like, wow, okay, that was maybe a lot that I went through and I didn't really necessarily give myself the space to be with all of that. So number one is just reflect back, sort of big picture, and then going into more how that translated into how you felt about things. Step number two is what were your wins? So I usually recommend writing 3 big wins. And so those would be like, what are the wins that stand out? Your successes. What are you proud of? What are the things that you accomplished this year that felt really good? And if it's more than 3, go for it. What did you learn from these successes? So that's the piece that's really important too. It's good to celebrate and to recognize those wins, but what did you learn from them? Because there's always something that we can take with us. Number 3, step 3 is, what were my biggest challenges this year? Your challenges, and I'm sure you went through some, we all do. It's, really helpful to look back and to see, okay, what was difficult? And again, the purpose is to then shift into, what did I learn from these challenges? How are these challenges helping me now move forward? How have I grown from them? So when you take that look back, the wins, sometimes actually the wins can be challenging to just remember, to be honest, because we tend to be so difficult. But you've got your wins, but the challenge is when you can take a look back and really see it. I recently recorded a free flow episode in this podcast where I sort of didn't quite know where I was going to go. And I just sat down and just thought, okay, allowed for my intuition to guide the conversation. And what really showed up was just how many changes happened this year. And that was like a big challenge, because there were big changes in my family, sort of my identity as a mom, changes in, we moved, and that was a huge shift, changes in the work that I do, the focus of my work. And those were all big challenges that I faced, moving through blocks around being seen and, all sorts of things. So taking that time to reflect back, but then to say, okay, what can I learn from them? So this was a challenging time. What can I take with me that will serve me as I continue my growth? So biggest challenges. Step 4. So one of the steps when I move through my setting goals for the year, and I call it setting goals with soul. It's a process that I do in my Spiritually Wired membership and also just myself and with clients. And that is choosing a word that represents the energy that you want to embody for the year. Of course, it could change. It's not about having this static word, but it's like, as you're focusing on the feeling, how do I want to feel? How do I want to show up? Usually there's a word that sort of represents that. And so number 4 is an invitation to sort of look back and see, okay, in what ways did I choose to embody this word, this energy this past year? And is this something that still resonates with you? What did you learn having this word as your guide? And what can you take with you? So again, for me, this past year, my word was deeper. And it really was, I just felt like I've got so much to do. And now it's like, I want to be more focused. And so it was more about depth versus breadth. And it's a word that served me and that really sort of guided, especially some of the changes that I made in my work. It really was about going deeper. So a great way to take a look back. But then there's also ways, as I was like doing this work of reflecting back on it, I'm like, yeah, there's places where I also maybe missed that. And so it's not about judging again. It's just about like, okay, how could I have invited more depth into this area? So taking a look back. Now, if you don't have a word, and even if you did have a word, the other, sort of prompt that I have here is that if your year was a movie, what would the name of it be? So what would the title of the movie be? And as you sort of start to be in like the space of like, what were the wins and the challenges that you faced, and just overall the energy of your year, is there a word that represents that? Like, what would you name that movie? So it's again like, just, it's so interesting how we can gain clarity and looking at it from different perspectives. So I know for me, it definitely was change. Like, I'm like, wow, I didn't realize how many changes I actually went through until I sat down to really reflect back on it. Step 5 is, so as you do this process of self reflection and you're looking back on your year, what are you choosing to leave behind? So when you take a look back on your year, what are things that you are holding on to that you realize are not serving you and that you can let go of? Now, this could be limiting beliefs. It could be like, maybe you've got a certain thought just on a loop that you keep repeating. Maybe it's habits, behaviors. Maybe there's relationships. Maybe it's the way in which you show up in a relationship. Maybe it's, it can be anything. So an example would be, let's say, busyness. Like, I am no longer someone who chooses to be busy. Busy is a word that I hear so often. I had a coach years ago challenge me to stop saying the word busy. And it's something that I still wrestle with today, because we are living in a culture that celebrates being busy. And it's like, we don't even think about it. Someone asks you, so how are you? Oh, busy. It's the first thing we do. And then all we're doing is feeding this energy of busy. So in order to disrupt any pattern, we want to disrupt it with something that is new. We want to change it, right? So that can be something that you're letting go of. I'm letting go of the energy of busyness. And it can be a habit. It can be anything that is no longer serving you. It can be a list of things. Go for it. Have fun. That brings me to step number 6, because step number 6 is, if you are choosing to leave this behind, then what are you choosing instead? So anytime we let go of something, we want to now flip the script and look at, okay, if I'm choosing to leave this behind, then what am I choosing instead? Right? That is always a way to support yourself when you are changing habits. So I'm choosing to let go of busyness. So instead, I am choosing spaciousness. I am choosing ease. I am choosing simplicity. So that is going to be the next step, is what am I choosing instead? And what are the rituals and the practices that are going to support you? So you can, just sort of have some fun. So now we're starting to look ahead, as you can see, but this is not really the goal setting piece of it. It's not, I've got another process for this, but this is where we're planting the seeds right now. So as you are going through this step of like, what are you choosing instead? Again, it is really about starting to get the juices flowing towards what is wanting to be created as you move into this new year. And that is step number 7. Take a look ahead. Where are you wanting to bring your energy to? What are maybe like the projects that, as you were reflecting back on the year, were there certain areas where you're like, oh, this is really something that is a priority, that it matters to me, it's important to me. And again, I didn't give it I put everything else ahead of it. And so notice what is showing up for you, and just free flow, right? See what is exciting you, what is calling you as you move forward. It's not like the goal setting process. It's more inviting curiosity around where it is that you want to go next. And then the final step, and that goes with any type of goal setting, intention work that we do. And this is the spiritual part, because this is called spiritually wired. The final step is always to surrender, right? So whenever we do this kind of work, it's like, okay, you do the best that you can from your conscious mind. You're taking a moment to reflect back, to see, what it is that you learned, what it is that you are taking with you, what it is that you want to let go. But then there's always this piece of letting go, of surrendering it to a higher power, and trusting that you are exactly where you need to be and that everything is unfolding for you. So this is where you want to take a moment, close your eyes, be with this reflection, be with this work, surrender it, invite gratitude for everything that you've received. And then it's like you are opening yourself up to possibilities, trusting, asking this higher power to guide you to where you need to be, where you need to go. So I hope that you find this episode helpful. There is a link so you can download the PDF with this year in process. Again, I just encourage you to take this. Like, to me, it's like a perfect way of practicing self-love, is to take that time, sit down with yourself, take an honest look back from a place of kindness and compassion towards yourself. It really is about being your own friend. And then, inviting this energy of possibilities into the new year. As always, I want to remind you that you are spiritually wired for abundance, for love, for success. And I will see you next time. Thank you for listening to Spiritually Wired. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow and leave a review. It really makes a big difference for the podcast. And if you're ready to dive deeper and join a soul-led community, come be a part of the Spiritually Wired membership. With weekly live lessons and a rich library of recorded classes, it's designed to support you every step of the way on your spiritual journey. We currently have a special offer where you can receive your first month for half the price. You can find a link in the show notes or come check it out at reneewalkerwellness.com. Until next time, remember to take some deep breaths. Remember that you are spiritually wired.